West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
At the end of the readings, we customarily add the phrase, offered as wisdom for the journey, and we invite you to respond with the phrase, may we walk in its light. This is simply an invitation to participate if you wish to do so. So today's first reading is from Eric Pavernage, who is a Belgian painter and writer living in Brussels. He has held exhibitions in Paris, New York City, Berlin, Dusseldorf, Amsterdam, London, Brussels, and Antwerp. And if you want to find out more about him, you can find that out on Wikipedia. A reading from Eric Pevernaghi. When the brain becomes too tired, the mind stops decrypting the perceptions in our mental world and surrenders willingly to the unguarded moments of life. For some time, the safeguards of our thinking pattern weaken and discontinue the decoding of the chips of daily reality. The mind picks the instants which are above suspicion, pure and innocent. When the whole world is entrenched in the bunker of physical and often emotional isolation, only flexibility and ingenuity can revive us to remain grounded and imbibe the bolstering sunlight piercing through the canvas of chaos. The second reading is by Leo Tolstoy. He has received nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize in Literature and also the Nobel Peace Prize itself, but he has actually never won the prize. Here's a short reading from War and Peace. A battle is won by the side that is absolutely determined to win. Why did we lose the Battle of Austerlitz? Our casualties were about the same as those of the French, but we had told ourselves early in the day that the battle was lost. So it was lost. Offered as wisdom for the journey. May we walk in its light.
Okay, we're good. Many of you have been with me for many years know that I normally don't use notes. And when I do use notes, I sometimes get lost. So I'm going to try to do a bit of each of that today. And if I get totally lost, I'll just come to some really creative end and you can all applaud. There we are. So I wanted to find a time when I could come and speak to you about what had gone on in the last couple of years of my absence, why I was away and how I got to come back. And there didn't really seem to be an excellent time for that until I started looking at the work that was coming out of readings that I had, a theme that I had created for this Sunday and the schedule of months of the year. And that theme seemed to spill into this because it was talking about that quest for centering of oneself, that how we find ourselves and stay in that place. And as I was doing the work of that, the first thing that came to mind was some work that Beethoven had done in writing the Ode to Joy, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But the moments that he was wanting to write that piece, he got so caught up in the work of creating something that would be of value and significance for a poem that he knew when he was 16, that he actually got completely lost, walked far too far for far too long, and was finally arrested as a tramp and put in jail until he was able to prove who he was. But that process of that brought me back to this question about, what happened to me and how did I get to come back? Because Beethoven, as many of you know, was deaf. He started going deaf early on in his career. Ode to Joy was his last piece that he wrote out of, like, sort of his biggest piece that he'd ever written, and he wrote it when he was stone deaf. But he went through a lot of challenges and difficulties in trying to find a way forward when his music was drying up and his deafness was a significant part of that. So when I need to go back a little bit before I left to talk about what was going on in my absence. And that was in spring of 2019. So we're talking like almost 5 years ago, well, 4 years ago, but that was when I started naming that I was experiencing significant cognitive loss. I couldn't remember things. I was doing things incorrectly. That's when I started using papers to preach. And if you watch the videos, you'll see me trying to use notes, and then you'll see me several times say, I have no idea where I am, and putting the notes aside. Some of you are nodding because you remember that. Because I couldn't remember, I'd get up here on a Sunday morning, I couldn't remember what I was going to talk about, even though I'd read the notes 15 minutes before. I couldn't remember how to make the coffee in the coffee maker I have at home. I couldn't remember conversations, which is nothing new. I've learned since then that the neurodivergence that I have and ADD makes that almost impossible for me anyway. But I couldn't remember if I was supposed to be someplace at a certain time, or I would show up and I was on the wrong day. And this was gradual, but in the spring of 2019, I began to get very seriously concerned. My father had Alzheimer's, my grandmother had Alzheimer's. I did a 23andMe test and found out that I had one of the 2 genes for Alzheimer's. So I knew that there was significant concern here. And I immediately found a book that had a whole lot of stuff about supplements and things like that, and I put myself on this ridiculously costly regimen and a keto diet, which I went on and I lost 25 pounds, 20 of which have found me again. But I lost a lot of weight in that, and I was completely freaked. I was talking to my doctor about it and didn't know what was going to go on. So anyway, that was way back in 2019. And then I had got an appointment in 2020 with a cognitive neurologist at Sunnybrook and had that conversation with her. I was here interviewing a candidate for employment here, had to leave to go do the cognitive neurology test, then come back and finish entering. Anyway, it didn't go very well, either of those. But I learned that my cognitive loss was because of a medication I was on that causes cognitive loss if it's used over a length of time at high levels. Now, I had used it for over 20 years as a migraine prophylactic at a very, very low dose. But then things happened in my life, and it had been ramped up to an antidepressant dose level about 5 years before, maybe 3 years before that. And so I was hugely relieved to hear that, and the cognitive neurologist said, so if you can get off that medication, that will be really, really good. So, I'm, okay, let's get off the medication, right? So I'm at 175 milligrams, and it's in 25 milligram tablets, so I knock off 25 milligrams, then I knock off another 25 milligrams, then I knock off another 25 milligrams, and I knock off, and then I got knocked off another 25 milligrams, and I was down to 75, and I was like, okay, so let's break this down a little bit, and I got down to 50, And then I needed to get different pills because they weren't 25, so then I got 20s. I could do 20s and 10s. So I started sort of playing with 5 milligrams each time. But come October 2020, I broke down. I could no longer function. I led a service, went home, and didn't come back. And none of you knew what was going on at all. And I'm sorry for that, but I wasn't in any space to be able to share that with you. So I continued going off, but this time, instead of dropping them every couple of weeks, I dropped every 6 weeks. So I went down 5 milligrams every 6 weeks from 50, 5 milligrams 6 weeks, 5 milligrams 6 weeks, 5 milligrams 6 weeks, 5 milligrams 6 weeks. I was only able to figure that out until I got to 20 milligrams, because they didn't come in 5s. So I went down 10 milligrams. Okay, 6 weeks, we'll do 6 weeks on 10. And then I went down the last 10 milligrams. And that was way too much for me to go down. So after the first about 35 minutes of Don't Look Up, a film I still haven't been able to watch, I went to bed for several days and was suicidal, was not able to care for myself at all, and was committed to my therapist and had a conversation with my therapist, and he would not hang up the phone until I was talking with my physician. So my physician, who had actually put me on another antidepressant at a low dose to try to help me with this ramping off, doubled that dose and put me on a massive dose of a second antidepressant, which saved my life. But in the process of that, I acquired a number of significant side effects to the new antidepressant, so I was put on another antidepressant to deal with those side effects. I still have the side effects, but was trying to learn to live with it. And then in last summer, I had a conversation with a dear friend of mine who is I call her a pharmacological anthropologist. She's highly respected around the world in the work that she does with pharmacology. She's a published author about books and studies and has been a professor for many, many years. And I was telling her about what had happened, and I learned that Canada recognizes that antidepressant withdrawal is a significant issue and that many people don't make it out alive, as I nearly did not. It's a significantly high percentage, but I can't remember what it was right now, but it's a very high percentage of people who commit suicide as they're on their way off antidepressants. So I was wanting to come off these other antidepressants because I had a horrific pain, and I was grinding my teeth like crazy. Anyway, no, the pain didn't come till I started coming off. My apologies. So I started coming off the antidepressants, and I told my physician that I was coming off them, and she said, okay, so they come in 37.5 milligram pills, so stop taking one, then stop taking another, then stop taking another, then stop taking another, and you'll be off them in a month, or you can stretch it out to 6 weeks if you want. And I said, that is a prescription for suicide. There is no possible way that I can come off this antidepressant, which is known in the industry as the hardest antidepressant to get off. There's no possible way I can get off that like that. I said, and furthermore, you knew I was coming off antidepressants. You knew that my suicidal desires and whatever it's called, ideation, thank you. You knew that that was the result of my coming off antidepressants, and you simply put me on more antidepressants. You never told me that you can actually compound antidepressants to take them in smaller and smaller doses. 10 milligrams wasn't the smallest pill it came in. I could have taken 8 months to get off that 10 milligrams, and that would have been fine. We don't know what we don't know, and doctors don't know what they don't know either, and so we have to tell them. So I want to get back to Beethoven. I wrote, when I started writing about why I was telling you this, I wanted to know why I wanted to tell you it, and why I bother trying to get off the antidepressants now. And it'll be the end of 2024 when I'm off them. I go down 10% of my dose every 3 weeks, so it'll take me till the end of 2024. But why did I bother? Once the antidepressants were out, there's so many other things in the world that drive me crazy that I find it hard to live through. I said I couldn't watch Don't Look Up. Scott and I are in a conversation about whether I can see The Way of Water or whether that will be too much for me to take. But I wrote down, I didn't want to stay blind to the world for the rest of my life. I didn't want to stay blind to the world for the rest of my life. So I didn't want to just be in this space where I didn't have to pay attention to what was going on anymore. And I didn't want to die because I felt that there was something that I could do. And so when Beethoven came out of this long walk and had been arrested and was in a dismal state, he wrote to his brother, "How could I possibly quit the world before bringing forth all that I felt it was my vocation to produce?" And I didn't come across that until after I had been writing about what I wanted to do. So this was Beethoven's point, right? And Maria Popova writes this. The reason he never gave up on Schiller's dream, and I'm going to get to that, even as he lived through nightmares, this is the point. This unassailable insistence that although the Napoleons, remember Beethoven was living through the Napoleonic Wars, and the Putins of the world will rise to power again and again over the centuries, they will also fall. Because there is something in us more powerful as long as we continue placing freedom, justice, and universal happiness at the center of our commitment to life, even as we live through nightmares. How many of you have heard of Friedrich Schiller? He was into transcendentalism and he was an idealist. And when Beethoven was 16 after Schiller's death, he read a poem that Schiller had written called Ode to Joy. And he was captivated by that poem. He had lived it within him through his whole life. But on that night that he went for that walk in the storm and got hypothermic and didn't know where he was and got arrested, the reason he was doing that was because all of that energy of that poem was writhing its way out of him. He was annexed by its truth and by the beauty of it. And so he wasn't him walking around. He was this creative element being born into the world. And I think that the work that he did in that time is a work that we have to find in our own lives. I mean, we're no Beethovens, right? We're not Friedrich Schillers either. But we've got something that only we can do. And we may not know the words for it. We may not know the place it's going to happen. We may not know why or who it's going to be for, or if it will even be something that, someone picks up in 60 or 80 years and goes, oh, I could use this, right, for whatever, and it becomes the perfect thing for them. I don't know. But I think that there are significant parts of our journey that are so unfamiliar and uncomfortable to us that we tend to not even think about them, that we put them to the side and move on with the day-to-day. But I think that in those places, in that discomfort is that truth that Schiller was talking about, and that is that there is joy, and there is George Oliver. Hello, George. For those of you who don't know, George has been ill for a very, very long time, and we are so glad to see him. Friedrich Schiller couldn't let go of the idea of joy, and we think of Beethoven's Ode to Joy as a hymn to God mostly, but Schiller's poem is a hymn to joy. It's about joy, and so I'm going to close reading pieces of his poem, and Scott's going to play Beethoven's tune over it. But before I start reading, I want to say thank you to those of you who hold on to the possibility of a what comes next, who grip hold of it, and no matter the discouragement, the fear, the shame even, you know you can come out of where you are. You can. And you hold on to that because you're human, because it's deep inside you. And that no matter what the world does, only you're the only person that holds that. You're the only person that keeps it vibrant in this world. And that is a source of joy. That's what Friedrich Schiller was talking about in all these mundane stories he tells in his poem, Ode to Joy. Joy, thou beauteous, godly lightning, daughter of Elysium, fire drunken, we are entering heavenly, thy holy home. Thy enchantments bind together what did custom stern divide. Every man becomes a brother, where joy's gentle wings abide. Who the noble prize achieveth, good friend of a friend to be, who a lovely wife attaineth, join us in his jubilee. Yes, he too, but one being on this earth can call his own. He who ne'er was able, weeping, stealeth from this league alone. Joy commands the hardy mainspring of the universe etern. Joy, O joy, the wheel is driving, which the world's great clock doth turn. Flowers from the buds she coaxes, suns from out the hyaline, spheres she rotates through expanses which the seer can't divine. From the truth's own fiery mirror, or on the searcher doth she smile, up the steep incline of honor, guideth she the sufferer's mile. High upon the sunlit mountains, you can see her banner flies through the breach of opened coffins. She's in angels' choir and rise. Courage firm in grievous trial, help where innocence doth scream. Oaths which sworn to are eternal, truth to friend and foe the same. Manly pride for kingly power, manly pride before kingly power. Brothers cost it life and blood. Honor to whom merits honor, ruin to the lying brood. Rescue from the tyrant's fetters, mercy to the villain even. Hope within the dying hours, pardon at the guillotine. E'en the death shall live in heaven, brothers drink and all agree. Everything shall be forgiven, even if it cease to be.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.